Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So it feels like it's been an eternity since I've done this sort of, I guess, video format. But anyway, it's league start in a few weeks, and we're going to do some, or we have been doing some testing as part of the Moving Stones event. It was a good opportunity to sort of run through my incineration build, which, funnily enough, I'm very likely going to play as my league starter. So I've done a heap of work to build this out for you. For anyone who follows the channel, I did do a full endgame build with this that got up to about 20 mil, and it can go as high as 30 mil. That was before putting anything like Mage Blood or anything on it. Super tanky, you would have seen it at the starting footage. It was running around at 618 depth and delve, killing bosses, killing Crystal Kings, and anything else that came up against it. Basically, one of the most fun builds I've put together in a very long time. So, a few peeps asked me if I could put a HP version together and a League Starter version, and I managed to do that. Now, before I get into the video, I'm going to preface three main things about this video, and this would be for anybody else who makes videos, who watches this videos and wants to say something or whatever. Number one, patch notes not out. So I don't know what changes are going to come through in the game. Who the hell knows? The one thing I do know is less than 20 people were playing this entire build, including myself, for last league at the, I guess, latest snapshot period. It's not a common skill played by most players, so I'm reasonably confident that we're not going to get a nerf to Incinerate, but who knows, GGG might turn around and say like, whoa, 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 we're not going to be having incineration players running around the game. We're going to nerf that before it becomes a problem. Anyway, second thing. There are two uniques in this build that I get throughout the campaign. Now, if anyone wants to sit through 8 to 9 hours of live streaming, you'll know that I bought these with the currency that dropped on the ground, and this was during the event over the last 2 days. But in case you're concerned about that and you're going to call this a bait build because it has Eye of Innocence and Immortal Flesh, let's pull it up on poe.ninja for the last league in front of us. As you can see, the pricing history from when league started was about 5C on day one for Eye of Malice, which is exactly what I paid for it. And it actually went down in the first few days to 2Cs and spiked at an amazing 3.4C, and then went back down to about 2C. Now, Immortal Flesh, more or less the same story, except this was even cheaper and drops commonly in the first day of league when you play. I've had a few drop for me, probably more than a few this league, and sort of sits around 3C for the whole league, with a huge peak of 5C being the price. So, is it a bait build? Well, if you consider 10 Chaos as you're leveling up through the campaign, when you do have availability to things like Delve from Act 4, you can do some minor delving and get currency in there, or you can just play the game and have 10C drop, which will more than likely happen. There's probably about a 70 to 80% probability of that happening unless your RNG is really bad. I don't consider having those uniques in the build bait. And so they will be in the leveling guides, and they will be from when they kick in, because I've built the trees as I've leveled up, and that's what I've put in. So the trees that you see there is exactly the way that I played it, as I optimized with a few other tweaks and whatnot. Now, last thing, this is a slower build. It is a channeling build. So if you want like satisfying, like run through the map at 2,000 miles an hour sort of pacing, this is not going to be the build for you. And that's okay, because not every build is made for every player. If you want to play a glass cannon build, absolutely go that way. For me, this build works for me, and this build is a build that I would recommend playing for a few reasons that we'll talk about in a moment, but mainly because it's a hell of a lot of fun and it scales really well. And as you can see in the first bit of footage, that was this guy running around doing absolutely chonkus damage in T3 to 4 maps with 10C, which will progress throughout and just absolutely facing bosses and destroying them in 2 seconds, which is really good on a league start scenario. And for anyone who watched the live stream, that's exactly what I was showing on the live stream too. Incinerate is a sleeper build, and there's a few reasons why it's really good, but let's talk about that now. Okay, so why is Incinerate so good at leveling, at least in our tests? Now, number one, you get it from Act 1. So, and we're going to talk about a lot of details in this video, but this is more a breakdown of the mechanics. So one of the reasons why Incinerate's quite good is because it actually has absolute ignite. So you always ignite with this skill, even though I have elemental focus in it, which should stop me from igniting. That doesn't stop me from igniting. So basically it says 25% more damage with hits and ailments for each stage. You get to 8 stages and you can get +2, which is what I would recommend for the Helm enchant in the Uber Lab. So +2, so you can get up to 10 stages and you can do a lot of damage in those stages. Now, the higher the cast speed, the more your stages stack. So faster you cast, the quicker your stages roll up. Now you get 100% increased angle per stage, which means more stages, bigger AoE. And then when you release the skill, and I'll show this here, so we're leveling up, we're at stage 8. When you release the skill, you let out an almighty big Kamehameha boom. Now that boom, that does 500% more damage with hits on the final wave, and 250% more damage with ignite. So it doesn't matter with ignite, you get 500% more damage with hits. Now, the reason why this is really important is the other thing that this does is that last hit always ignites. So final wave always ignites, as written on the skill there, which means we can actually throw in this node, critical strikes do not inherently ignite, 100% increased damage with hits against ignited enemies, and that actually works really well. The other big advantage that this build gets is because it's built on the predicated notion of that break. So you can have spell interruption avoidance, which is 25% chance to ignore stuns while casting. So you can get this up to 25, 40%, 55%. But that's okay, because the reason why we run immutable force in the final version of the build is because even if you get a break and your channeling snaps, that then does a huge burst of damage, and it actually works in your favor for enemies to mess up your channeling, versus like if you were playing any other skill where channeling you'd be like, ah, shit, you know, that screwed me over. Instead, this build's like, ha, you can break my channel, I'm just going to whack you with a bigger hit. And this synergizes even more if you use the caster mastery, 25% more spell damage if you've been stunned while casting recently, and that then transfers to if you've got immutable force. You can be stunned, have up to like 600 to 900% recovery on that stun. So you'll be stunned without even knowing you've been stunned. And then you'll just let out an almighty burst of damage, which will do more damage and then continue casting. Which is why this build works in maps and why you could see in the B-roll that it's quite strong, because it doesn't really matter if you get interrupted. And the other area, you can also take Conjured Barrier and do 30% chance to ignore stuns while casting and all other sorts of stuff like that. So there's a few things that you can do to mitigate stuns. The other thing I use on this is Brine King, because again, you don't want to be getting stunned all the time, but this gets more powerful with stuns as far as hitting you and then you break. You don't want to be perma-stunned, so you want to have this mitigation to stop that from happening. But as long as you can get your channels up quickly enough, you can actually burst damage down things as enemies hit you. And that's a good feature of the build. That's one of the reasons why I really like it. As a channeling skill, that works really well. The other thing is the damage is crazy. So already on the tooltip here, we get stages as we channel. You know, we get up to like 27,000 DPS on just the tooltip. And this is just a level 72 character on a 5 link with absolutely nothing leveled up. But to give you a better idea of what this looks like if you're like a big Chungus version of the character, as you can see, I have played this character in both endgame and leveled it up in a HP base, and it works both times. So we'll just load in and I'll show you what it looks like. So on the tooltip, that's unbuffed. Let's go back to my hideout. All right. So on the tooltip, we can see 405,000 DPS straight away. And as we ramp up to 10 stacks, we go up to 577, and that tooltip, as we buff and do everything else that we do and generate charges and all the rest of it, we'll get up to about 950 to 1 million DPS just on the tooltip for this. So this is a very, very strong build at an endgame scenario and just surprisingly scales through the wall. And as you can also see, I do have Nature's Presence, or Nature's Patience, sorry. So in the endgame build, you will see that as you stand still, you actually get stronger, and that gives you a huge advantage, I guess, moving forwards. Now, the other thing, you don't have to worry about too much mana reservation efficiency. Like the big skills here, we got in the endgame, Tempest Shield, Herald of Ash, Discipline, Zealotry, Determination. That's basically it. And basically that's just coming from, you know, our gearing from like Replica Dragon's Flight and all that sort of jazz. But I'm not going to talk about the endgame build in this scenario because there's a whole video for that if you want to know how that works. And I'll put that link in the description. In this case, we're going to talk about the leveling guide and how we're going to get to the endgame build. And yeah, so let's go into the breakdown of the tree. Rightio, so leveling up with this build's pretty straightforward, and I'll just talk through each of the acts one by one at this stage. So in Act 1, you're pretty much going to be using Rolling Magma and Combustion with Elemental Proliferation as your first skill, and that's when you pretty much get into the first area. You're going to choose Rolling Magma. The reason being is it's just got great AoE, it hits everything. Now, Elemental Proliferation it procs Ignite, and that's going to do a lot more damage. And Combustion should become available to you before you're level 10. So switch to that, and that's going to give you a good run through the first act. You're just going to clean through all the enemies. You're going to then equip Firewall to assist Rolling Magma. Make sure you cast the Firewall before you in an area where you shoot the Rolling Magma through. That's going to amp the damage up. You'll also equip Clarity and Vitality, so I'd purchase Clarity first. Well, sorry, you'll get that as a quest reward, and Vitality, just go to Nessa and get Vitality from her directly, and Flame Dash as well, if you can get that straight up. And in the absence of that, then Frost Blink is going to work just fine until you get to the point where you can get Flame Dash, and bite that is. Now, before you fight Mavel, make sure you go back to town, switch out to Incinerate, and then you get that from Nessa. And you can equip that on a 3-link, which you should have by the end of Act 1, and you'll have Incinerate, Combustion, and Elemental Proliferation. So you would be proccing Ignite and doing increased damage with the Elemental Proliferation, as well as Combustion reduces elemental resistances to fire, which is going to give you a lot more damage earlier on. Now, when you get into Act 2, you're going to equip Herald of Ash and Tempest Shield. Pretty straightforward stuff, and then just continue leveling through. Act 3, get to the library area, or the library quest for NPC by the name of, I would say, Sosha. You're going to get determination from this one, and you're also going to get the flammability curse and molten shell. Now, in the absence of putting determination on, if you put purity of elements on, if you're struggling with elemental resistances, this should be fine. And then eventually introduce determination into the build once you take a few more nodes that give you mana reservation efficiency. In Act 4, we're going to lab. First Ascendancy we're going to get is Shaper of Storms. This is going to apply shock to everything and increase the amount of damage that you do. So this is going to be a huge advantage earlier on to Incinerate. And by the way, we're playing Incinerate all the way through with this. No other skills are needed at this stage. Act 5, literally just keep leveling through. Big thing, make sure you're trying to increase your HP, armor, and your resistances all the way through, and just look for better wands as you go. If you can get a unique wand to drop earlier on, or get one for 1C or something like that, like Ash Caller or something like that, that's going to give you a big advantage. Same goes with Act 2, just continue to level, max out resistances, HP, armor, and continually upgrade your gear. Otherwise you're going to fall behind and the build's going to feel bad. That's where most people make their mistakes in leveling up new builds in a league start. They don't keep upgrading their gear. In Act 7, you're gonna ascend again, and you are going to pick up Mastermind of Discord. In Act 8, you'll continue leveling up again. Just make sure you keep balancing. As I've said, just balance, 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 balance. More resistances is better than no resistances, or half-measured resistances. In Act 9, no major adjustments are going to be needed in Act 9 at this stage. Just keep continually looking for better gear is the name of the game at this stage. Now, if you're not level 65 by the end of Act 9, go to Blood Aqueduct and just farm until you're level 65. The reason being is this is just going to give you a better run through Act 10, get you to the maps quicker. If you're under-leveled because you're blasting through too quickly, this is going to result in a bad experience when you get to endgame. And again, that's where a lot of players get frustrated when they get to maps and they constantly die and then they hang up their towel and don't play again for the league. Don't be that guy. Get to level 65 by the end of Act 9, and then you can start to pan out some of the issues in Act 10, and you should have enough damage and resistances to damage incoming to be able to deal with anything that's going to come at you. At this point too, if you can ascend again, get Heart of Destruction. This is going to give you Convergence, and Convergence is a huge AoE buff to the Elementalist, as well as running Incinerate. It's like full screen at that stage. You don't need to scale anymore. Now, Act 10, clear Act 10, get your points. Now you're going to have to rebalance your resistances, make sure they're capped. If they're not capped, then cap them, find a way to do it. Just switch out gear, look for better gear. And this is where we're going to start now looking for the upgrades and things like that we'll talk about as we look at the early mapping POB, as well as into the target POB that we're going to go for anyways. So that's basically the leveling guide of how to get this build cracking. All the way through, I had no issues. There'll be links in the description to the 2 live streams for this as well. So if you get stuck, please feel free to ask questions, jump on the Discord, or just have a look at the live streams and see what I did, because I actually balanced the build on the fly and it worked out pretty damn well. I didn't get stuck on anything and it pretty much creamed through all the bosses without any major issues across the whole campaign. So it was a very, very clean run. Total run time, without any mucking around like what I did, was about 6.5 to 7 hours, give or take, depending on how efficient you are and the drops that you get. If you've got any RNG, I don't, so you'll probably do better than me. Okay, so we're on a bit of a journey with this League Starter guide. So anyway, let's talk through this tree. Sorry, not this tree. Let's talk through this tree. Okay, so you've completed maps and you're finally starting to tick through the game, and we can actually pull the character up on screen here. This is our character that's at about 450,000 DPS. Now, we've gotten through the campaign, we've done everything, we've got a few gear items, so what are we up to in this build or where it's at? So in the tree, there's a couple of adjustments. Number one, I'm using a Cerberus limb instead of a Demon's Horn 1. Now, for anyone who's wondering where you get a Cerberus limb from, literally just go into Delve, go down to like depth 80, you're going to push down there and then basically farm the Val boss, and like 50% of the time he drops a Cerberus limb, easy peasy. So starting off, and this is like our early mapping build, by the way. This is like up to T6 maps, and then we want to keep increasing the breadth of, I guess, gearing on this too. Eye of Malice is probably one of the most major items on the life-based version of this build. Now, the reason why is it gives you 25% chance to inflict fire exposure on hit, and that's pretty significant with this build. It also gives you a good amount of energy shield, so you can get your energy shield pool up as well, and we actually rely on that pretty heavily in this build. Next of all, we've got a 5-link chest setup. So this is just like, you know, all of your resistances you might need. Ideally, you want this in armor base, but I've got life, resistances, energy shield. Anything else you need, get it on your chest, and that's going to do the job for you for now. Wand, literally just like any wand with fire spell damage. You want cast speed, crit multi, and flat spell damage if you can get it, and that's basically all you need for the wand to get that kicking. I've got this Wheel of Storm Sail. It's not ideal. Like, any better shield than this is much, much better. Higher armor, more resistances, more regeneration, more life are all better qualities. Amulet, in this case, I've got just something to fill in the gap, but anything with crit multi or cast speed is going to be a huge advantage, and +1 fire spell skills gems is going to be a great advantage as well. On the rings, you're going to want any resistances that you can get, cast speed if you can get it, life recovered on hit or with damage taken if you can get it, pretty much anything else that amps you up, and also Death's Rush if you can get it on this build as well. If you have a drop or you can get it for dirt cheap early on, that's going to give you a huge buff with adrenaline too. Same with the other ring. Now, gloves, ideally focus gloves, and the reason why focus, it's going to give you a huge buff to attack speed, cast speed. But that's basically it for gloves. Rest of it's just resistances and all the rest of it. Immortal Flesh is the belt of choice, and this goes for the HP endgame build as well. It's just got huge amounts of regeneration, huge amounts of, or good amounts of mana regeneration, so you can cast and not have to deal with any mana problems. This build doesn't have mana problems. And yeah, basically the best in slot. Now, boots, I did have gain onslaught on hit for 4 seconds. That this just dropped as a veiled modifier from Syndicate. It's completely doable. I did it. No reason why you shouldn't be able to. Just keep running Syndicate. It'll drop eventually. Now, flasking. I'm just running any old Quicksilver, Diamond Flask, Ruby Flask, which is really good. And a Sulfur Flask and a Life Flask to get me started. Now, I will eventually put a Granite Flask into this as well. I'll probably switch out the Sulfur Flask or something of that nature. But for now, this is working pretty well for me. That's it from a gearing perspective. And let's talk about skill gems next. So let's do that. So for skill gems initially, like, I haven't got this setup really optimized at all. I'm literally just running Flame Dash to get around. Infernal Cries, so when I'm up against enemies, I drop that and it just cracks everything in. Now, if you can fit Urgent Orders in there, that's going to give you more Warcry cast speed. It's just going to mean you have to wait 2 more seconds to cast, which is fine. Then in my gloves, I've got Herald of Ash, Arcanist Brand, Flammability. Until we get an Asenath's ring, there's no point in doing anything else. I think it's Asenath's ring. Anathema. We don't need to do anything with Arcanist Brand beyond that because we can only apply Flammability because we can only apply 1 curse or hex at this stage. Once we get Anathema into the build, and we'll talk about that in the next iteration of the tree, then we're going to really flesh this out, and we'll get to that point. In the chest, I've got a 5-link, which was dirt cheap. I think I spent like 5C on this 5-link, but ideally, like, you'll have something drop. Alternatively, make sure you're doing Val side areas all throughout the campaign from about Act 6 or 7, because you've got a good probability of a 6-link dropping in one of those. Be it corrupted, it's better than not dropping at all, and you can work with that to get your 6-link, because that early damage is going to give you a big buff up. But as you can see, I've got Incinerate, Elemental Focus, Infused Channeling, Inspiration Support, and also Critical Strikes. I recommend trying to switch out to Inspiration Support by like Act 8 or 9. I haven't got it in the POB, but I would recommend it. It does make a big difference, and it's a good damage buff. In my boots, I've got Determination, Frost Shield, Molten Shell, and Cast and Damage Taken on level 4 and level 7 and level 5 Frost Shield. We'll upgrade those eventually, but for now, that's good enough to get you through early mapping. And then in my shield, I've got Purity of Elements and Tempest Shield, which I don't actually use as an active aura. It's just there. This is corrected in the POB for you as well. And then I've got Ignite Prolif, which I can ditch. But basically, really, really simple setup. If we look at the POB, I'll just talk through this now. I'm not going to go through in great detail of where you should go in Act 3, what buttons you could click or whatever. I'll run through it now just to sort of give you a sort of brief sort of run through, but have a look at the different POBs in the description. That's going to outline that to you. So, starting off, I did go up through spell damage. I got Arcanist Dominion. I picked up Practical Application and Heart and Soul first up. Then I came up and I leveled up to Firewalker. Then I go up and I grabbed Annihilation. I grabbed Mystic Bulwark and my 12% mana reservation efficiency. Now, I didn't take this straight away. I left this. I came up and I went straight to my Heart of Flame node and straight to my Critical Strikes to Not Inherently Ignite, 100% damage with hits against ignited enemies. Then I came down and got Cruel Preparations. Then I grabbed my Arcane Will next. That was the sequence. So for my way of building this, I actually always go to the right first, and the reason being is I wanted to get to Influence early on, because these traveling nodes really hurt you later down the track because it becomes very grindy. So I got Influence, and then I picked up Written in Blood. And then I came back across, I grabbed my block nodes, my Arcane Guarding, and my 1% chance to block attack damage, 5%, 1% chance to block attack damage per 5% chance to block on equipped shield. That gives me a good buff up. I get to 29-29 in my, or 29-24 in my block. Pardon me. Then I came down, I went to Sovereignty because I want these mana reservation efficiency nodes, Purity of Flesh. Then I came down to grab my Faith and Steel, grab Divine Judgment, I grab Devotion, and then I grab Divine Shield. And then I come back up and I grab my Arcane Potency because I don't need that initially straight away. Now, if you're struggling for attribute points, you can break down here and you can pick up Might and Agility, or you can break down here and pick up Physique, which is what I've done here to get around that. And then that pretty much is it. Outside of, you want to grab Discord Artisan. This is going to make your damage off Heralds do a little bit more damage. You can grab this earlier on if you want. And then I grab Discipline Disciple of the Forbidden, and this gives me power charges, and I can do more damage and crit once I do that. I only grab this at like level 68. You don't need this straight up as you're leveling. This is more prevalent in mapping when it becomes more important to have power charges and different levels of damage. Now, as I noted in the leveling guide, obviously I got Shaper of Storms first, Mastermind of Discord, and Heart of Destruction for convergence. That gives me huge AoE. Then I'm going to get Bastion of Elements, which I didn't have in this, but I do have in the POB. And that's basically it for leveling this build up and how to do the skill tree. So let's talk through the life version of the build that is like Super Chungus, and that's in POB right now because I haven't built that build. This is where this build goes. But you can achieve this. I did this in like day one, in like a few maps. So this can be done in the first day, no sweat. You can put the game down, be happy that when you wake up on the Sunday morning to play, you're going to have a good day that whole day. Or you can play all night and level up maps and stuff, whatever. But this works, it's nice and easy, and this is the character in front of you in a league start scenario because I actually started this on the event. So I have no currency in here. I have nothing. It's like barren. Anyway, let's talk about the mid to end game target tree for this POB and how we get there. Okay, so at the stage of play in this version of the build, like we've progressed past early mapping, we've moved further into getting better gear, making currency, going down and delve. We're a bit more battle hardened in the game. So yeah, anyway, this is where we get to. So first of all, 9.5 million DPS isn't bad. Like if you've got a crafted one, 11.6. But I just put a Cerberus Slim. If you even want to put an obliteration one, you could do that. But yeah, Cerberus Slim should be okay. And that's easy to get a Cerberus Slim, by the way. And the reason why I picked it, a huge amount of spell damage, elemental, cast speed, everything you need for this build. And it gives you early ES as well. And it gets your pool up to 1.7k and then 3.5k HP. So you have a good amount of ES and HP, which synergize. And the effective hit pool on this version of the build is 194,000. So it's very strong. Yeah. Anyway, so let's talk through the gearing. So Cerberus Slim, nice and easy. Spell damage, cast speed, elemental damage, gives you energy shield per 5 armor on equipped shield. So that works well. Dawnbreaker. So this drops off Exarch. Really easy to get. Should be available within the first few days of League. And it converts a lot of damage to fire damage. And yeah, so it works really well. The other thing is it gives you a huge amount of attack block, 23% attack block, huge amount of armor, and then scorches enemies in close range. So this isn't accounting for scorch damage as well, because it just doesn't want to give me that. So yeah, anyway, and we'll talk through the POB very shortly about around the configs as well. I have Malice with Incinerate with +2 stages. So this enchants our upgrade to our initial Eye of Malice in the last POB that I covered. So yeah, nice and easy. I don't know how hard that's going to be to get and how much that's going to cost, but it's worth it. It's going to up your damage. You can see the damage drop off without the +2. It drops off by a good chunk of damage, like 1.4, 1.5 mil. Now, Saints Hauberk I've got as the chest armor, so hybrid armor, hybrid ES chest armor. And the implicits are 5% attack block and increased effect of non-curse auras. And then I got like Chaos Rares attack block crafted on, basically getting our attack block up to 67%. And we could do something to get this further, but I haven't done it. This makes this character a lot stronger, having a smaller health pool at the end of the day, but also a lot of regeneration. So we get up to about 767 HP regen per second with all the regen off the gear. Gauntlets, Titan Gauntlets in particular, damage increase per frenzy charge, because that's just flat damage increase, and I'll explain it in the next gearing item how we're going to get frenzy charge. More fire exposure, so it does a heap more damage. And then we also get 34% increased attack and cast speed on focus. You can get focus gloves, which is a higher rate of attack and cast speed. I just had to craft it this way because it was easier to do it. It doesn't come up as the right roll in Path of Building. But yeah, these would be the recommended gloves to get initially, and you could get way better gloves than these, but this is just a start. Rakesh's Impatience, the reason being is because this build stands still, automatically you get every charge, so we juice up power charges, we juice up everything else, and we get maximum charges, so we become even more tanky, and we do a absolute crap ton more damage. And in this case, I've got the enchant implicit for regenerate 2. The enchant for regenerate 2% of life per second if you were hit recently, which is really useful. Just gives you more regen. Amulet. So amulet isn't the easiest amulet. If you could get the dragons, I think it's the dragon's blade or whatever it is, replica dragons, whatever it is, with incinerate, with +3 incinerate, that's probably my preference, but this is a really good alternative. So it has a lot of resistances on it to balance that, but also cast speed, life, and +1 to all fire skill gems. If you can just get the cast speed and life and craft on the resistances, even better. I've got all attributes, so it's an Onyx amulet, and I do run Charisma as the anoint on this. Now, one of the most important rings, as you can see, a lot of damage comes from Anathema, and the reason being is because we go to like 5 power charges in this tree. So we get power charge here, we get power charge here. We can have 5 curses or hexes on enemies at any point in time, and this ring is actually not very expensive in early leagues, so definitely worth having a look at least. Like if this is one of the first things that you invest in, then absolutely go for this ring. Otherwise your damage is going to be lacking somewhat, but yeah, it's a really good ring. And that being said, this is like a endgame very nearly build that can take most things down. At 9.5 million DPS, it's nothing to scoff at for a league starter. Now, Amethyst Ring, cast speed, resistances, life, chaos resistance. Pretty easy stuff. You could put a Death Rush on this if you wanted. It's going to increase damage. Up to you. I'll leave it how you... Yeah, it's up to you how you want to play it. Immortal Flesh. This is just going to give you regeneration. It's pretty much endgame item as it is, similar to like builds like RF. Works very similar. I would actually get the corrupted version with the implicit free, the cast speed, or increased effect of determination or zealotry. That's going to either increase your damage or increase your defense, just depends on how you want to play the game. Now, Diamond Flask, Ruby Flask, I do have an Aureus End on this. It doesn't increase your damage, it just gives you better clear. But you can literally change this out with any other flask that you want to put it on. In this case, you could chuck on like a Granite Flask, and that's going to give you a lot more defense. Probably worth putting a Granite Flask on it, to be honest with you. Now looking at it, it gives you like 207,000 effective hit pool, so that's what I'm going to recommend, because this is still a bit of a cheaper version too. I haven't went like all out here. This is achievable within the first week of League, I would say, or week and a bit. So I've got an Amethyst Flask, I've got a Sulfur Flask as well with cast speed, which gives you a good chunk of damage, and it automatically triggers. Now, Jules, so I do have a large cluster. You're not going to get this large cluster straight away, though you could craft it if you get the right base. Give it a crack. Otherwise, if you can get this, best case scenario, do it. Natural Affinity, I'd recommend getting this sooner than later. Probably the first unique jewel that you get. Watcher's Eye, this has got 15% increased cast speed with Zealotry, and you actually want gain 25 life with Vitality, and then we would run a level 1 Vitality in the build as well, and that way we could have life regeneration at a really basic level, and it wouldn't take up any mana, and we'd be able to sustain it no sweat, so yeah, that's an option as well. Immutable Force. So, as explained at the start of the video, you're going to need this to recover from stuns and hits like that. Really useful. Intuitive Leap, we really do need this because it gives us access to Protocol Perfection, which is 350k DPS. Deep Thoughts, which I had in here for mana sustain. And we could also take Presage, which... well, actually, we don't need Presage, so we don't need that. But if you needed the mana reservation efficiency, you could take it for that purpose. Gives it a little bit more survivability, and also infused flesh, so we recover from taking inbound damage. So all really good reasons to take Intuitive Leap. That's it for the gearing. It's not like a really intense sort of build to gear, and you could switch out the other items I've got in here and have a play around in the POB and change things around to see how you want to accommodate the build better. It's up to you. This is what I've set up in the POB for you to target. If you're going to play the life-based version, then be my guest. Okay, skills in this. Pretty simple stuff. Force activated. Ooh. So we've got Divergent Incinerate, level 21. Infused Channeling, which is Anomalous as well. So Anomalous gives us more damage. Just more increased effect of infusion, I guess, at the end of the day. So we've also got Increased Critical Strikes, just level 20. Elemental Focus at level 20. You could put on a Awakened Elemental Focus, and that's going to ramp the DPS up to 11.2 mil. And you know what? We're going to do that anyway. So get a level 5 Awakened Elemental Focus. This is where you want to get to. It's going to get the gem level of Incinerate up by +2 as well, so that's going to give you a lot more damage. And then if you had the right wand on this, you could actually just put the Kraken Barb, and you get to like 13.6 mil DPS, so it's pretty good. Not gonna lie, let's stay with Cerberus Limb to make this simple. Then we're running Increased Critical Strike Damage and Inspiration, and you could put Anomalous on this if you can get it. That's going to give you more damage because it gives you more crit strike, but I'll leave that up to you. Divergent's also an advantage because it's going to mean, well, Divergent, I wouldn't recommend for the price of Divergent. Just get an Anomalous, and that's going to increase your damage, but yeah, default is fine as it is. In your weapon 2, you're going to run Molten Shell, Custom Damage Taken, and Enfeeble. Because we've got Anathema, we can do that. We can just have as much curses as we want, basically. So yeah, we do that. In our boots, we have Arcanist Brand, Flammability, Elemental Weakness, and Assassin's Mark. And we could probably fit another curse somewhere else in if we wanted to, but, you know, is what it is. Determination in the Helm, Zealotry, and Defiance Banner. Now, if you're struggling for mana reservation, just ditch Defiance Banner. You still have tons of survivability, and it's going to free up mana for you as well. In the first weapon, Infernal Cry, Urgent Orders, and Flame Dash is what I had, but you can switch that out for anything else if you want to put Shield Charge instead of Flame Dash for more clear speed. Be my guest, go crazy. In the gloves, I've got Tempest Shield, Portal, and Herald of Ash as well, which is just usual, and we get Primal Aegis from our Ascendancy. Now, it does have 2 warnings down here. Strength can be quickly fixed, and Mana Reservation Efficiency can be sought to deal with the mana problem. Alternatively, you could literally just take Defiance Banner off, and that fixes that problem altogether. That should cast perfectly fine. It doesn't drop things, and in fact, I'll just take it off there for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, that's it for the items. That's it for the skill gem setups. Really simple stuff. Let's talk about the POB next. Okay, skill tree. Basically, same setup. We did convert the nodes at the start here, so we saved 1 skill point here. All the same in here. Because we have Intuitive Leap, we can take an extra Power Charge, we can take Deep Thoughts, Infuse Flesh, and we can also take Prodigal Perfection, which is pretty much optimum. Then we come down, we grab both these Alacrity and Physique nodes, and we grab Throat Seeker, and we do come down and we make sure we have all these nodes here. Now, if you need a more crit and you can fit it in, you could take this, and this is going to amp your damage up as well. You could compromise on life and run more crit if you feel your build's tanky enough. It's up to you, and that's going to ramp your damage up to like 12.4 mil. So have fun with that. Then we come across, at this stage, will have put in our Cluster Jewel, and we have Nature's Presence. And then down here, we've pretty much got our Watcher's Eye in here, our Overcharge node, and we have Divine Shield, which I think we had before, and our Divine Judgment. And that's basically everything you need to know about the build. And obviously we have all our ascendancies up here too. Really strong build. So let's talk about the configuration tree, and then we'll wrap it all up. Okay, config tree. All right. Let's do a bit of a bullshit test on this. So number 1, Soul Anaris, Soul of Tukahama. You can run Soul of Brine King, actually. That will drop your survivability down. So let's do that because it deals with stuns and things like that. Time spent stationary is 5 because we need that to proc our Nature's Patience. So if we have that lower, our damage does go down. So not moving makes us stronger. And it also means that we have our Rakesh up. And with Rakesh up, we have maximum power charges, frenzy charges, and endurance charges. Focus comes from the focus node on the gloves. So obviously the Titan gloves have focus, and we map that to the move button. So we always have focus up. Arcane Surge, we get that from the wand that I have in here initially. So in here I have, I think it's actually this one here. Yeah, I had Arcane Surge. Actually, that's going to do better for you. So this is the one that I crafted at the end of League. Very easy to craft, literally a couple div. So it's more expensive, but it gets you to 30 million DPS with a little loss of survivability. But you get Arcane Surge when you kill enemies, so that means that will work. Flasks are active, yes. Are you on Consecrated Ground? Yes, we're running a Sulfur Flask, so we have Consecrated Ground. 10 enemies, we don't need to worry about that. Have you killed recently? Probably, so we'll tick that. Have you been hit recently? Yeah, we're probably going to get hit a lot, so yep. Convergence works on bosses, so if we have a look at Convergence, it is gain Convergence when you hit a unique enemy no more than once every 8 seconds. So, and then when you don't have Convergence, you have 60% increased area of effect. So yes, Convergence is practical and it works on bosses. So that's boss DPS. That's not mapping DPS. Arcanus brands up and Fusion will always be up by your channeling. So yep. We have enemy is burning and ignited. Yep, because we always ignite. So yep. Effective shock. I've got it at 20%, but we can put it at 14% if people want to be really finicky about it. Up to you. Enemies are exposed to fire, yes, and this is because of the helm that I'm running in this build, when I can find it. So we're running Eye of Malice, we do exposure with that, so yes, we are exposing that to enemies. We have enemies covered in ash, yes, because we run Infernal Cry, so we go bam, Infernal Cry, and cover them in ash. Now, is an enemy a boss, guardian, or pinnacle? Yes, no other changes in here. Basically, that's it. So this tree is completely legit, will work, and if you gear it up properly, will do you the justice that you deserve. Yeah, and that's basically it. So I guess we'll wrap this video up. Okay, as a final note, this is my like crazy tree. Now there are tattoos in this tree currently, and I need to remove them out of the build because it does give me things like onslaught and whatever. So I'll readjust this tree sort of later down the track. But this gets up to 29.9 million DPS. It is very strong. I'm not going to explain further into it because I've got a whole build guide on the channel, so I'll put a link in the description to this tree. But basically, this uses a mechanic called Chaos Inoculation, completely converts all damage, or removes all chaos damage at the expense of having ES. And we have about 4.9k ES on this build. This is a 100 build, so this is like when you've got money in the bank or div in the bank, you would play this build. And the build that I showed at the very start is this build, so less 7 levels. So yeah, that's where we got to with it. But I'm not going to talk about this in great depth. This is an Aegis Aurora variant of the build, uses Incandescent Heart. It has an implicit Incandescent with +2, which it was like 12 div during the league. Uses Replica's Dragon Fang. Now, at any stage, you could put Replica's Dragon Fang in this build. It's going to give you a huge damage increase because it's +3, and it deals with mana reservation efficiency. Vivisect is dirt cheap. Bottle Faith is dirt cheap. Pretty much everything else is relatively cheap. With the Thread of Hope, you could farm off Cyrus or just buy it, but this one's usually worth like 1 to 2 div earlier on because it's a large ring, and it uses Glancing Blows as well to get down here. But there isn't too much respec, and the reason why I built the HP tree off this is because if you wanted to respec to this, you could do it very easily and very cheaply. You just need a bit of extra gearing, and you just need to adjust the nodes where, you know, we have a few extra nodes down here and here. But that's about it. That's basically our like full mega in-game tree. But there's a whole build guide on this, and I'll put a link in the description to it. Okay, so just noting again, patch notes aren't out yet, but I decided to put this video up because people were asking for it. And you know what? If people want to throw a tantrum about it, patch notes not being out, and post all sorts of shit in the comments, go crazy and do it. This build's been tested. I think I've given a pretty good cogent argument as to why it works. I've shown that it works. I've leveled it up in the campaign, got it in the early map, shown that it works, put the tree together for like early endgame. It's consistent, it's got a good EHP, and then shown the endgame working as well. So unless they literally nerf Incinerate or the Elementalist into the dirt, I just don't know how this build's going to collapse because it's not a played skill. If anything, my standpoint is they might actually buff it. And the other big advantage here is if there's any other builds that come out with, or any other skills that come out that uses channel, so this can be used with Storm Burst, this can be used with Lightning Tendrils. You don't get the damage levels that you get with Incinerate, but it works nonetheless. So if you wanted to play channeling builds with this setup, you could absolutely change the skills out, and I invite you to do it. Come up with some cool build iterations off my tree, slap a Mage Blood on it if you're the sort of player that can afford that, do some crazy shit with it. This is just a starting base to get you going. If you want to change the Ascendancies, it works well on the Inquisitor, just a little less damage, but more damage, I guess, defense. But yeah, anyway, post up any, any questions you might have, chuck it in the comments. Otherwise, good luck with build testing for the start of the league, and I've got plenty more videos planned. This will be the only video I put up before the patch notes, just because I'm very confident with this build, tested it throughout, and I'll write all over this video in every comment section that I have put this out before patch notes, and I'm pretty sure that I will still get like 100 comments there that will say, oh, the patch notes aren't out yet, because they haven't actually watched the video. And yeah, anyway. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and sub. Don't forget to follow the Twitch. Don't forget to drop a comment. Join the Discord. We've got a lot of peeps in there who have experience in a lot of different builds, especially Delve-centric builds. And anyway, until next time, have a good one, and bye.